You know, there's a lot of things that we use on our motorcycles that are actually illegal, and some people may not know about these things. Actually, one of them, a lot of us actually wear commonly on our motorcycles that should be illegal and is not right now. So we're going to talk about that one too. That one may actually surprise you. And of course, I want to hear from y'all after the video. Any of these that maybe caught your attention, you think should be illegal, or leave it all alone. Either way, I'd love to hear your opinion after the video. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. First one I want to talk about is motorcycle helmets, but not the helmet itself. Of course, there's states that, require you to wear a helmet, and there's other states that have no helmet laws. But the material on the inside of helmets is actually a big cause for concern. And that is PFAS. So PFAS, it is actually an acronym for a word that I'm not even going to attempt to butcher or destroy right here, but it is the common material that's used on the liners on the inside of helmets that helps absorb sweat. It's also a common material that's found in chrome plating and also in weather-resistant gear and boots. Now, this has been a pretty big cause of discussion in a lot of circles. And so this stuff has been made since the 40s. It's a synthetic material that has been used in a lot of different things, from O-rings to, like I said, sweat shields and helmets. There's actually a lawsuit right now with firefighters that wear this type of gear for cancer-related deaths and illnesses. And that's the biggest thing. It can actually cause some cancers. They've actually linked it, I guess, to cholesterol and obesity as well, but I'm not going to be blaming this material on my little bit higher cholesterol levels. But, the whole cancer side of it, that does kind of make me nervous a little bit. Now, I've heard that January 1st, 2025 is when some sort of a ban will actually go into place, but it's not going to be like a nationwide ban at this point. It's going to be more state by state. So as you would imagine, California and more restrictive states will be the first ones to kind of jump on. And normally I'm not about making things illegal unless they are hazardous to people, and that's when I absolutely disagree with it. And, it's almost like asbestos, right? They knew asbestos, was dangerous since the 1930s, but it took all the way until the 70s to really catch fire, and then, lawsuits in the 80s and beyond. And it's always just the cheapest bidder, the next cheapest thing that they can make, that they can sell and profit off of. Unfortunately, it seems like we are the guinea pigs for a lot of this stuff. And so this PFAS or PFAS material, I hope it becomes illegal soon. I had never heard of it until I was doing research for this video, but man, I'm sure glad that I did, and I'm sure a lot of y'all would like to hear that as well. Now, of course, this can be argued by people that don't wear helmets. See, I told you, wearing a helmet is actually more dangerous than not. But, at the same time, I don't subscribe to that, but I'm going to try to find materials that are not do not have this synthetic PFAS material in them. And so I'm going to do a separate video on this. I'm going to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole. Didn't want to do that in this video, just wanted to let you be aware of this. But I'm going to go a little bit further down the road. So if you are interested in that video, make sure you subscribe, because I definitely want to find out more about this very important thing that a lot of us wear on our motorcycles. Now, the next one I want to talk about is one I understand on the surface, but I don't get it overall, okay? And that's mirrors. Aesthetically, if mirrors didn't have to be on our bikes, would it look better? Yeah, probably. More streamlined, for sure. But looking in your mirrors, I don't know about y'all, but this is something I constantly do. Obviously I'm scanning ahead of me more often than I'm looking behind me, but I look behind me quite a bit, especially when I'm coming to a stop, changing lanes, on the interstate for a while, just kind of seeing what's going on back there, making sure nobody's running up on me, making sure people are stopping behind me. I use your mirrors a lot. And so the aesthetic part of it, I get, but there's a ton of aftermarket options to make the mirrors actually look better on your bike. Or you could do something as simple as what I did on my Sportster. I literally just flipped them around, and then I got the aesthetic appeal. And actually, I was able to see better out of the mirrors when I actually flipped them upside down anyways. So there's really simple ways to take care of the aesthetic appeal and still be able to keep that functionality and how important mirrors actually are. That's going to lead me into my next one. And if you ride a sport bike, you may not be happy with the things I'm about to say. So it is what it is though. Integrated turn signals. You know, you have to have mirrors on your bike, right? And that's illegal for sure if you don't have them. And you should have turn signals on your bike, but integrated turn signals do not do as good of a job as separated turn signals. Even if you look at something like, you know, an Indian Scout or Indian Scout bobber, right? They have the two LEDs that are the brake lights, and they have the turn signals that are all built in. But it is a bright enough light. They are separated from each other. So when you are going to make a right or a left-hand turn, people can clearly see your actions, right? One is going to have the brake light, and then one's going to have the turn signal. Is this ideal? In my opinion, no. But at the same time, it provides a decent amount of light, and it can be seen from all angles. With an integrated, that's really not the case. And this doesn't just apply to sport bike guys, and I totally understand. This is an aesthetic thing as well, because a lot of sport bikes come with that big, ugly piece of plastic on the back that holds the license plate and all this kind of stuff. I get it. I mean, it is ugly, but at the same time, having more light, in my opinion, is better, right? And so the more light we have, the more chances we have of being seen. That doesn't negate the fact that you have to practice swerving and, you know, paying attention and all this kind of stuff. But lights do work. You know, you are a third of the size of a, you know, regular vehicle. So having more light will hopefully, you know, show other people around you, hey, I'm a motorcycle, smaller profile. And that's one of the biggest issues, and why we get hit so often is because people literally just don't see us. So more lighting, the better. I'm just not a fan of integrated lighting at all. Even when I talk about the Indian Scout, I don't even like that. I'm talking about the Scout Bobber specifically. I don't really like that. But at the same time, I think that's just a step better than fully integrated flush brake lights and all of that kind of stuff. It looks way better. But at the same time, I would rather have a little less aesthetic appeal and have that functionality and having really good lighting on my motorcycle. Now, I don't want people getting the wrong impression here, because I'm a live and let live. If you want to go out on your motorcycle and never wear a helmet, have integrated turn signals, take your mirrors off, whatever. That's up to you. Do I think it's a smart idea? No. But I also like to make these videos because some people get a lot of bad information, or they just don't think about the unintended consequences that can happen when you make these changes to your motorcycle. And one of those things is running motorcycle slicks or racing tires on your street bike. Now, racing tires require a lot of heat in order for them to stick to the road. That's why they have tire warmers. But when you get on the street, it's not like that. You have stop and go traffic, you have stop lights, stop signs. You're constantly coming to a stop. Very rarely are you, just going left, right, unless you're on a really curvy road like the tail or something like that. You're not really doing that a whole lot. Speed and gravel and other cars and all these kind of things, weather, all this stuff really kind of dictates how you ride, much more so than your abilities and skill on a clear and dry track. So running the stock tires, for the most part, are going to be the best option, or just street tires in general, because again, you have a completely dry track that's, free from debris and gravel, and those motorcycle slicks do not do well with, oil or debris, gravel, wet paint, all that kind of stuff. They just don't do good on those surfaces. So running slicks on your motorcycle, it may look cool, you may think you're going to go faster, but at the same time, if you hit anything, any of those things that we talked about, it's not going to work out well for you. So running the stock tires or just stock street tires will be the best option for your street motorcycle. Another thing that's illegal to put on your motorcycle, or can be illegal, is the height of your handlebars, but it varies so wildly from state to state. Most states require that the handlebars are not more than 15 inches high when you're seated. There's other states like Georgia that require them to be no higher than 25 inches. I think Mississippi or one of the other states actually requires 30 inches, which is pretty freaking tall. Some states say 6 inches, and then there are some states that have no restrictions on this. But the whole idea of this specifically is that it impedes the vision of the rider. Now, I've been guilty of this as well, not necessarily with handlebars, but with having a GoPro or, my Insta360 mounted on the handlebars, and to an extent it does impede vision. And so I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, it really depends on the rider. I mean, you could have somebody that's 6'4" and have 16 or maybe even 18-inch handlebars on their bike and be totally fine. Whereas you get somebody like me that's 5'7", and once I go over like 12 inches, it might start to impede my vision just a little bit. Now, that's why I've talked about like the Spearhead KST bars that I put on my motorcycle this past year. I really like those because I kind of pulled them back just a little bit and pushed them in a little bit, and so it's perfect for me right now. But they also do talk about handlebars impeding your ability to maneuver the motorcycle effectively. So this is something you just kind of want to watch out for. Now, I don't know how many people actually get stopped for something like this, unless you're just totally egregious and way up here and you have a 6-inch limitation or whatever the case may be. And honestly, I don't even see how that's comfortable, to be honest with you. But handlebars in general, getting the right setup, man, I found out this past year how important that really is. I thought my bike straight from the factory was perfect. Why do I need to put handlebars on it? And I found out after I did a long road trip, man, it makes a big difference. So this is something that all riders are going to do, but you just want to watch out for those limitations in case your state has a specific handlebar height that you got to stay under. Now, one of the most common things that we all change is exhaust, but it's actually against federal law to tamper with any EPA compliant piece on your bike, and that includes the catalytic converter and the mufflers. Now, you may be thinking, well, we all do that, so what does it really matter? And, at the end of the day, I'm right there with you. But, each one of these motorcycle manufacturers and car manufacturers, for that matter, either have like an EPA, like a total EPA rating for all their vehicles, or whatever, or each vehicle that leaves has to be under that certain compliance in order for them to sell their motorcycles. As a matter of fact, Vance and Hines was fined like $500,000, $500,000, because they were selling exhaust in California that was not compliant. So it is a pretty big deal. And although it all comes down to EPA, they listed under like the Noise Act of 1972, but let's just be honest, it is run by the EPA, and so that's their biggest concern. When I did my full Reinhardt exhaust this past year, that actually retains the catalytic converter, and it's approved in like 49 out of the 50 states. Of course, California is not approved. But either way, manufacturers, of course, have to stick with that compliance, and aftermarket exhaust companies are starting to catch on because obviously they don't want to be fined that amount of money either. Now again, how many people are actually stopped for exhaust? I think this is highly dependent upon the state that you actually live in. I know down here in the South, I can't imagine anybody pulling any one of us over for a loud exhaust. You might piss off a couple of neighbors. That to me is my biggest concern, is I don't want to piss these guys off. You wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you take your bike to work, and you're literally waking up every single neighbor along the way. I guess that really depends on where you live as well, but, having respect for them, there's really no way to get around it. If your bike is super loud, you're going to wake them up. Not everybody appreciates a really good sounding Harley with tab performance pipes with the zombie baffles in them. I know I like that sound, but at the same time, not everybody wants to hear that at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I think that's probably my biggest worry, is just I don't want to piss my neighbors off, but hey, some people don't care, and there's that as well. I personally like the Reinhardts because although they have a really nice deep rumble and they sound amazing when you get on them, they're also fairly tame when you're just sitting at idle. And so it gives you a pretty nice balance. If I want to hear my exhaust, I can open it up full throttle, or if I want to hear my music more, then I can just kind of sit on the throttle or hit the cruise control, and it just gives a nice deep tone to it, and it's not overpowering. But really, that's up to you, man. People like loud exhaust. I love loud exhaust, and I love the way Harleys sound with exhaust on them, and I don't see any EPA, nothing stopping us from being able to put exhaust on our motorcycle. So this is one that is not bound to change anytime soon. And the last thing that we'll talk about is engine swaps. Now, again, this is highly dependent upon the state that you live in, but some states like California are super strict on actually changing the engines in your motorcycle. You know, they require that the engine, it can't be older than the bike itself, but it also has to be a California approved engine, so you can't buy one from, let's say, Florida and have it shipped out to California unless it's a California compliant emissions. They also require that it passes smog testing, and then it's got to go to the Bureau of Automotive Repair. I didn't even know that was such a thing until I started looking up stuff for this video. But, you know, doing engine swaps, it sounds like a pretty common thing. You know, people do stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, but just swapping the engine in general, you really got to be careful with that stuff because, again, it all comes down to emissions. And so that is some of the most common illegal modifications or things that might become illegal in the future. I'd love to hear from y'all. What do you think of the list that I provided? And you provide your own things that you think are illegal, and I might use those in a part 2 if you guys like this video. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. You could also join me on Patreon or join right here on YouTube and never have to leave the site. Big thanks for watching. See you in the next one. And as always, hold 'em down.